Welcome back to another video. And this one we're going to be talking about Spain, the Chick Corea standard, jazz standard. At this point, it's a jazz standard, definitely. So this tune has some really sophisticated harmony that you can really dive deep into, and but you can also get into it over like a really basic approach and get some really cool stuff out of it. And so I'm going to jump into it and talk and pause and talk and go for really trying to discuss my approaches to certain parts of the chord progression. And a lot of these thought processes can be applied to other chords in harmony. Not all of it's just specific to Spain. It's just this is a really great chord progression, and there's a lot of stuff that you can think about as far as scales and substitutions or superimpositions or things like that. So we'll get into it. I'll kind of get my fingers warmed up and play over it for a little bit and then talk about some stuff that I do, and hopefully you guys get something out of it. Here we go. All right, all right. Okay. Woo! So great stuff. As you can maybe tell, I really like that tune. So it's super fun to play over. Let's jump into some of this. So let me back up on this chord progression a little bit. Actually, no, we're here, right here at the front. So let's talk about it. So we're in B minor. For those of you that understand that, this stuff will go well for you. If you guys don't understand any of this music theory, that's okay. You might get something out of it. Just get as much out of it. If you hear some fancy words that don't make any sense to you, it's not really the point. It's more about the sound that you get out of it. So if you're a guitar player, obviously this will translate a little bit better because you can just look at my hands and kind of figure out a little bit what's going on. But I'm going to talk about things in some music specific terms. So don't let that shy you away from it. It's not as challenging as some make it out to be. So here we go, B minor. So B minor and D major are relative. So if you're looking at a key signature, you got two sharps. So all the notes are natural except for C's are C sharp and the F's are F sharp. And for the most part, that fits over a lot of the harmony. You can play in B minor for a lot of stuff, and you can do if you're understanding what notes belong to what chords, you can get away with playing in B minor. So let me do a chorus or a partial chorus just using notes in B minor, and it's really about nailing the tones that fit with the chord. And first thing you can do is just use your ear. And so if you don't really understand a lot of complex theory, figure out B minor. Except for that one, don't use that one. That's So figure out B minor on your instrument and use your ear to guide you through the harmony. And there's certain notes that are going to sound good over certain chords. So I'm going to play a quick chorus just using only notes in B minor, no fancy harmonic substitutions. So that's the 7th of that G chord. It's also the root of this, that F sharp. The 9th of that. Grab the 7th of that, back to that F sharp, which is the 3rd. Now it's the 7th. That works. That was a chorus just using 4 notes. And I mostly used F sharp. F sharp kind of pivots through a lot of these chords, and it works through most of them. Now I can get more melodic. I'll continue on with this and play a little bit more melodic, still just using B minor. Kind of biffed that last note there, but it was, other than that, I accidentally played that one. Those were all notes in B minor, and what you want to work on if you're at that level is different. I did a couple things just kind of naturally, different phrasing. So I used a lot of syncopation. And so you can use that, so your rhythmic vocabulary is being enhanced. You're not so much worried about your harmonic vocabulary. And then another thing I was doing was, and I started doing it there, is different tones and timbres. I was kind of palm muting some notes. And then I started sliding. So different articulation. And I started mixing picked notes with legato notes, the hammer-ons and pull-offs. And then also just exploring more of the scale. So if you kind of moving away from this stock position and getting more into the scale. There's a whole, on guitar, you want to see the scale over the whole instrument as much as you can. And that's going to open up different phrasing because your fingers are going to lay in different spots and different positions. And then it'll also open up your ability to have an extended range for your melodic creations. And then also leaving space. Space is always good. And sometimes thinking too much about harmony and trying to really just blow through the changes, we forget to leave space. I do it too. And especially on something where it's kind of fun like this to just shred over. And so you can get away with just playing in B minor, and I highly recommend that if you're just starting out with developing your jazz vocabulary and your harmonic understanding. For those of you that are on a higher level of harmonic understanding, I'm going to start talking about how I think about some of these ways of approaching it. So over this G chord, the G major 7, I'm thinking I'm still thinking B minor, but if I start to think in G land, I want to make sure I think G Lydian. So when I hit if I hit the fourth, it's a sharp 4 or sharp 11. That C sharp. And for the most part, I don't really hit that note too often over that chord intentionally. Sometimes I do it just because it's a finger pattern. But if I'm really into melodic creation, I tend to focus more on the arpeggio. So G major 7. I'll add the ninth sometimes, which is an A in this case. And then same thing when I get to the F sharp, I'll think arpeggio a lot. So practicing arpeggio patterns is really, really helpful. That's really helpful. Now, scalular over the F sharp, there's two ways that I tend to approach this if I'm running scales instead of arpeggios. And that's this chord right here before we hit the E minor. One is I'll use G melodic minor, and that's really helpful in a lot of cases because if I think G Lydian then G melodic minor, in my mind I can stick to the same root. And then I can change just the couple notes that change. So I changed B's to B flat and C's to C natural, or C sharps to C natural. And that helps when I'm in fast mode because I can think of the same root and kind of just keep my focal point of G planted. Even though I know I'm playing over an F sharp chord, the scale that I'm using is related to G root in my mind. So it helps me navigate if I'm doing getting to that E minor 9 chord, which is the next chord. Another thing I'll think of is B melodic minor, and that gives me kind of a whole tone sound for those of you that are familiar with the whole tone scale. It's not a whole tone scale, but it has that thing because it's got a lot of whole steps in a row before you hit the first half. And so it kind of sounds whole tony. So when I want that vibe over this F sharp chord, still thinking about the same chord, I'll think about B melodic minor instead of G melodic minor. So that's, and then that'll lead me into the next chord, which is the E minor 9. For that one, I don't do the B melodic minor as much as the G. For some reason, I don't feel that vibe, but I do it, and I like it when I do it. It's just I don't do it a lot as much. The E minor 9, I'm just thinking back to the key of B minor or D major, so that's like an E Dorian scale. That's just straight up D major key signature. So all those. Now when I get over to this A, sometimes I'll stick to just staying in D. If I don't want to really accent this flat 9, sharp 5 business that's going on, I'll just stay in D, but I'll think more as an A7 arpeggio, so I'm really accenting the 1, the 3, 5, and 7 of the A chord. Getting to that. So this is 2, 5, 1, and then 4, all in the key of D major. So you can basically just stick to D major or B minor if you're thinking in B minor, and all that stuff sounds good. I just try to accent and tend to resolve the notes properly to the chord changes. So you can kind of forget about these extensions here. Now, if you want to accent those extensions, what I tend to do is the same trick I did over here, where I did melodic minor up a half step. So for this F sharp chord, it was G melodic minor. And for this A7 chord, up a half step would be B flat. So it would be B flat melodic minor. And there's two ways that I go into that. One is I'll think of maybe B flat melodic minor over this, or sometimes I'll think of just a tritone away from this chord, which gives me that B flat. It depends on where I'm at mentally and physically on the fingerboard at the time. Whatever pops into my head, I go with, because it's kind of, you're in improv mode and you just got to go with it. And so, I like to use arpeggio, so if I tend to come from something like that, and then I go into a scale thing, it's kind of nice. But sometimes I'll go into an arpeggio, and then I'll go into a B flat minor arpeggio sometimes, even though it's not fitting strictly into that B flat melodic minor business. If it's kind of played so fast, it works. And so sometimes I'll do something like that, which is kind of out sounding. So I'm doing, in this case, E minor 9, and then the same type of arpeggio, but a tritone away. So that's B flat minor 9. And you can keep that going if you want. So you need to resolve. And then just paying attention to your resolutions. So what helped me when I was working on these crazy substitution, scale, superimposition, jazzy stuff, is not thinking so much about, okay, B flat melodic minor over A7, even though I just explained that in that way. I actually think about it as B flat melodic minor. How does B flat melodic minor move into D major? Instead of thinking of it over A. It's a really subtle difference in my mental shift, but it helped me take care of my resolutions when I'm playing this out stuff. When you're playing stuff that's out, it sounds cool, but it doesn't sound cool if you don't resolve it well. If you resolve it in like a really unintentional way, or don't resolve it and you just keep playing out over it, it kind of sounds like a mistake. And we don't want that. We want the out sound to be a color that we're using and not sound just random notes that are not in the key. And so I'll think of how, when I'm practicing, I'll play B flat melodic minor and think about visually D major in relationship to B flat melodic minor, instead of thinking of it the other way, which I've done also in the past when I was younger, learning this stuff as a harmonic substitution. I would previously think about it as B flat melodic minor over A7. So I'm trying to see that A7 and the B flat melodic minor at the same time. That's great, but it didn't tell me where to go, and that's where I needed to know, is where am I going, because I need to resolve it when I'm playing this fancy stuff. And so I started thinking of B flat melodic minor in relationship to D major. And that was starting to see where my resolutions were happening. I could take that B flat down to A. I could take that F up to F sharp. E is in, I can do that down to the E, which is the 9th. And then that third in B flat is also the 7th of the major 7. So knowing that is helpful. So knowing these kind of exit points in the scale and getting into it and then out of it. Out of it's very important. So let's see here. I'll play, just for quick example, I'm gonna back it up, and I'll play over this using basically just B minor. I'll do this. B minor, D major key signature, except for over the F sharp 7, I'll use G melodic minor, and over the A7, I'll use B flat melodic minor. All right, let's see what we got. Good. So that first part caught me off guard a little bit. Started it earlier than I thought. But one thing that I did here, I didn't really like the idea that I did, note choice-wise, but the idea is something that I also want to talk about, is when we practice these scales in shred mode, that's great, but that's just so you have the facility to do that, in my opinion. So when you do want to shred, you can. It's always good to have a rhythmic foundation to what you're doing, as opposed to a melodic foundation. And that's the way that I approach it anyways. So the melodic stuff helps me choose the right colors over the different chords, but the rhythm is what locks things together. And so I'll do another example over the same spot, and I will talk about that more. So I did something like, over that I went, where these notes are extracted from that B flat melodic minor scale over the A A7, but I'm not thinking about the entire thing where I got to shred it all. I just need that to complete this rhythmic idea that I started previously. And I can do that in a number of ways. I didn't really like that note choice when I did it. It was something like that. It didn't really sound that good. Mostly because I didn't like this note right here, this E flat. It didn't sound very good. So what I might actually do is go. That would have been way cooler. That would have been way nicer resolution. And so that was this rhythmic idea that I then translated into the next harmony. Now I could take that maybe up a little bit. And so if I knew where the notes were in these different areas, and I have this idea where I'm doing this rhythmic thing, but I'm also ascending, and I want to continue that into the next scale, I might do. Where it's kind of got this, and the harmony that I'm thinking about is guiding me to the next colors that I can transplant this rhythmic idea on to the next tones. And so I'll try to think of things, and I do think of things in a specific way when I'm practicing, because I want to make sure I know where all the notes are in relationship to the chords and things like that. But when I'm improvising, I try to think of things in a general way so that I can play with these ideas in real time. If I'm thinking of them too specific, my brain just can't work that fast, and I can't think of all the specific information. So I think of a general thing, and the general thing for me tends to be rhythmically driven. So in this case, I can do that. I can go up like that example, and then I could try that same thing while I'm practicing developing my own ideas, descending. To do that same thing. That kind of 2-5-1 in D. And you're going to see 2-5-1s all over the place in a lot of songs. So it's not like that concept only applies to Spain and only applies to these 3 bars of Spain. It applies all over the place. And so thinking about things in a general way after you've done the specific homework in the practice room is really, really helpful. And so that was just an example from that section. Now, some things, I'll kind of start to wrap this video up, and maybe I'll do another one on Spain because there's so much. But another things that I like to do, and this is more, I'll get into the guitar specific zone. So if you're still here, thanks for being here. And if you're a guitar player, even more so, this is more for you guys. Just this one thing that I like to do, and I do this over a lot of things when I'm dealing with oftentimes major type chords, something that has a major triad as a basis, but I'll do it over minor types, and I'm pretty sure I did it when I did that improv session right at the beginning of the video, is this lick that I actually got from Paul Gilbert back in the day when I was younger and I was really into Paul Gilbert, is this string skipping idea where you're doing a major chord. When you skip over the B string, the second string, so you're doing a triad in this case. And so this, I used it, I think, during this next section. I've used it in a bunch of different spots, but I as my harmonic knowledge grew, I expanded that to add the 7th a lot. And so, and I'll basically kind of loop that, and it creates a lot of velocity and speed, which is like a good way to express energy to your audience. And so now I like to do that, and this works. I'll do it so like I've done it before, and I'm pretty sure I did on the first session. Over this D major chord, if I happen to be in that zone, I'll do that D major Swifty arpeggio, and that's arpeggio works over the G major 7 too very well. And so due to the note choice and the velocity you're playing out, it works. So you can just keep doing that for 2 bars. And then what I do when I got here to this next section over here, over the C sharp 7, C sharp is D flat, same things. I'll do that same thing down a half step or down a fret, and then I'll just change the seventh so it's a flat seven instead of a major seven. And that's easy. It's relatively easy once you get the coordination to do it to just shift it down a fret. And then over what I'll do over the F sharp 7, I'll shift it down to a C7. And that works because it's kind of like a tritone substitution. But C7 is also just one fret down again from C sharp. So that little lick can be translated, and it has a lot of energy to it. So let me put that in context a little bit. Back it up out here. So I'll do it over the D major 7. Same concept. When I got into that vortex of notes, I got to know where I'm getting out of it. So I needed to know get into that G major 7 chord. Okay, so did I then did the D over the D chord, which makes sense, and then I did D over G, which works harmonically, and then I went down a half step, did D flat, changed the seventh to make sure it fits with that, so it's a flat 7, and then I went down again to a C7 over the F sharp 7 here, and then here I actually changed the pattern harmonically, so the fingering was for a minor chord now. I did the same kind of arpeggio pattern over the B minor 7, and then I changed it when the harmony changed to B7. So the minor one and 7, and then got out of it on the G right there. And so that's a fun thing to practice too, harmonically, just doing to do that. And so that you can put that into your practice session. It's a little fun little trick. And you can mess around with it too, just maybe doing the opposite way. Go start with major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, then down a half step, major 7, dominant 7, minor, you can walk all the way down the neck on every chord in harmony, major 7, dominant 7, and minor 7. So that's more of a guitar specific thing. Now you could do that harmonically on the saxophone. That would probably be the best instrument, or aside from piano, you could do that too. So the harmonic concepts will work the same. Trumpet, good luck. Trombone, even better luck to you to do something like that. Violin might have, I don't know violin fingerings very well, so you might have some patterns like that work well that you can just kind of loop. And sometimes that's a good strategy to find things like that work in a kind of to build velocity, because that's another tool that we can use as improvisers to translate energy. It's kind of a high energy thing, and if you're trying to go for that high energy vibe, then you want to do that. You want to have those tools in your toolbox to be able to translate to that higher energy for your bandmates, and then also hopefully translate to your audience, because that's all we're really doing is creating energy curves, low areas and time periods of low energy moving to high energy to low energy to high energy to really high to really low. And that's what creates a lot of nice dynamic contrast for your audience, which is really, really important in all music, but I think especially in improvised music, because improvised music can get kind of monotonous with a bunch of really, sometimes if they're really technically proficient players, they can get into just loops of playing a lot and it's not really enticing to the audience, especially if the audience isn't consistent of a bunch of jazz players. And so we should keep in mind who we're playing for. If you happen to be in just a real jazz casual that's just a bunch of jazz cats in the audience, that's a good time to try out these wacky, crazy, groundbreaking ideas for yourself. When, in my opinion, when you're playing for an audience consistent of people that are coming to enjoy your music, make sure that they enjoy your music. And that's my take on it. You want to make sure that they're enjoying the melodic inventions that you're making and creating in real time, and the energy that you can translate from yourself to everybody in the room. That's kind of our job. Even though we are artists, we also want to make sure that we are entertaining, and that's part of the art form. Is in my opinion, is to entertain, and you can still do that with improvised music, and it doesn't have to get all cerebral all the time. So have some fun practicing. Hopefully, some of that stuff helped you guys, or at least if it maybe you just enjoyed the video. Um, this is a very long one. And if you're still here, you're a trooper. Thank you very much for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one.